Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Double Tap on YouTube. I am Stephen Scott. Today, I'm going to talk about accessibility at Lenovo. It might not be the company you might think about when it comes to new accessibility features, but their latest lineup of ThinkPads, their premium business brand of laptop, will have a brand new accessibility feature which will be rolling out to all of their devices over the coming year, which is very exciting. With us now to talk more about this is Graham Thomas. He is the Senior Technologist for Lenovo in the UK and Ireland. Great to have you with us, Graham.
Thanks for having me.
Now, of course, Lenovo is a huge company, which to date, I believe, is still the largest manufacturer of PCs and also seller of PCs globally. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, I think the official line is with the world's largest PC vendor by volume. So you're quite right. You know, we shift more PCs than all of our competitors.
That's quite incredible, isn't it? I mean, the PC really does remain king amongst all of the other options out there. I mean, you know, I love talking about Mac all the time, but, you know, the reality is Mac is a tiny proportion of the number of PCs actually sold out there, and Lenovo is leading that. What do you attribute to the success of Lenovo in a very crowded marketplace? You've got a lot of competition out there.
I think the key thing, and it's particularly in the role I do as well, is we listen to customers and we bring products out. I mean, you mentioned Mac, you know, at the end of the day, it'd be lovely if people were queuing up overnight to buy our products because we convince them to, but you know, we're not in that position. We are very much to put it crudely, square pegs for square holes in a way. You know, the team I'm working in the UK is replicated all around the world, and we're out talking to customers, press, even our business partners, you know, users, even at trade shows, public shows, taking all of that feedback and giving it to our EMEA product teams and then our worldwide product teams. It's very flat, our sort of design structure. You know, our sort of head of design, a guy called Brian Leonard, you know, if he wasn't asleep at the moment in the States, I could get him now. You know, he travels around the world with a team and they want to hear from people. And I've been with the company now, sorry, cat in shot there, but I've been with the company now 13 years, and I could think of, you know, dozens of examples of where in my time I've been in front of customers in particular verticals or retailers. They've told us where we're missing something, and within a couple of years, we've come back with a flight case with a lock on it, opened it up and shown them, and it's resonated. I remember that. We had that conversation. So we've got great examples of taking that feedback and producing products based on it.
You know, obviously many questions to ask you today, but first off, what's the cat's name?
Oh, that's Nina.
Nina the
Yes.
cat. Oh, well, welcome to Nina as well onto the
Probably
program.
got more views on the platform of social media than myself, really.
Hey, listen, I'm all for it. In fact, if you can bring the cat in more, because I believe people do watch cat videos, so, you know, it'll get our numbers up. I think that's going to work for us. You know, it's interesting you talk about design, because one thing I would say about Lenovo, and I'm not being unkind, but let's just say everything tends to always look the same with Lenovo laptops. What is that about? Is that a deliberate effort to essentially, you've found a design that works? We all know it's durable, but you know, you've got that traditional black case design. Is that something that you design that you feel is important to continue that, or are we about to find out that there's a new white version coming next week?
Yeah, I mean, it's very much a, you know, Model T Ford kind of thing, but ultimately it's there's no point just making a change just because, oh, here's the new model, so let's move the webcam to below the monitor, or let's shift all the keys around so then we can say, look, you can clearly see it's a new model. Ultimately, you get to a point where the ergonomics work. You know, we test, you know, we've got diversity and inclusion officers involved in the design process as well. So when we get to a design which is widely accepted, with some minor tweaks, you know, then there has to be, we've got this phrase in Lenovo about purposeful design. There's no point facelifting something if it works, you know, and you can see that, you know, to look at a mass market product that we sort of all get exposed to at different times is a car. You know, sometimes manufacturers can make a facelift for the sake of it, and everyone turns their back on sort of what is that sort of the most popular car in the UK, all of a sudden drops down to sixth because no one likes the facelift. And it might be cosmetic, but, you know, very more importantly, and for the right reasons, if those are ergonomic changes that then start to affect the way people interact with that device and drive it, It's wrong, and even more so with the last 4 years. When people are getting their new laptops sent directly to their home address, they're somewhat isolated, even if they're tech savvy. If they've got to sort of look and learn at well, hang on, this has changed. Oh, where's that key gone? That's not how I'm used to using it. You've then created a problem for the user in isolation because they're sort of on their own at home. And then you've got the thing where they might be picking up the phone to the help desk. If they're seeking help, that's downtime, that's costing money. But in terms of user satisfaction and even employee satisfaction, it's not right. So yeah, what you see with some of our devices, someone say that might look the same as last year's one, but then there's a lot of little subtle things, and it's my job and then the team I'm in to communicate those changes and why.
At Lenovo, you're saying, okay, we're not going to change things for the sake of it. We are going to improve on that. And that's one area you've done with the keyboard. You've improved the keyboard. Talk about what you've done here to make the keyboard more accessible.
Yeah, so we've always had the home keys on the F and the J key, and feedback. And you got to remember as well, but like any employer of a reasonable size, we've got users who've got accessibility needs as well. So we're not just looking at our customers, we've got a duty of care to our own colleagues. And based on customer feedback and our own colleagues, we realised there was scope. Nowadays, the keyboard hasn't changed that much in terms of the number of keys and buttons, but what we're trying to do with that keyboard has increased. We're not just typing letters, and there's a need to very quickly move to certain areas of the keyboard for functionality. So we've actually put more raised bumps across the keyboard. So the volume buttons on the function row, there's a smaller one for volume down and a bigger bump for volume up. There's one on the insert key, enter. There's also a slight change we've made in the bottom left-hand corner, but having a few more bumps around are enabling users to navigate around there easier. But a big change we've done, and this is actually one that's sort of turning things around after about 30 years. One of the big sort of comments that's been made about our keyboard is we've always had the function key at the bottom left of the keyboard, and the control key was the next one in. Now, whenever customers who've come from competitors or even using desktop keyboards have said to us, look, everyone else has the control in the bottom left, then the function key, you've got it the other way around. Can you not just change this? And you can swap it in software for people who really want that functionality. But the argument's always been, if we do that for customers coming from a different brand, we could alienate all of our existing customers. And you mentioned about us being the biggest vendor. That's a lot of existing customers. But then the criticism was leveled that what about visually impaired people? And that was all it took. That obvious thing, where we stood by it and said, look, all of our other customers are used to it, but it is an obstacle for anyone who's visually impaired, because even a desktop keyboard is the other way around. So it was the right thing to do. So this year's keyboards, the control is in the bottom left, then the function key, because that's what the world's used to. So yeah, but just by saying, look, we've got too many customers who are used to it, that argument didn't hold water anymore.
That's incredible. And it kind of shows the power of a very small group of people. Let's be honest, visually impaired people are. I'm part of a very small minority in the world today, but, it does show that our voice holds some weight, even in a big company like yours.
Absolutely. There should be no barriers. I believe, when was the UN, I think it was 2006, there was the UN law about inclusivity and things. And that's a lot of people look at that as that's the line you have to cross. And it's not. That's the minimum. That's what we're all legally mandated to do. But we're looking at it that there should be no barriers to entry for technology. One of our strap lines has mentions about smarter technology for all, but ultimately it has to be. Technology is an enabler. So for anyone, however small that community is, if it's something that enables everyone, and certain smaller communities, the enablement is more crucial to them. And then if you've created a barrier there, that's unforgivable. So it's one of the things, I'll give you an example. So with VR headsets, we looked at it that certain people of different ethnicities, faiths and cultures might wear different headdresses. They might even style their hair differently to celebrate their faith or, where they're from in the world. Now, it should none of the stuff which is part of them as an individual, them as their culture should be a barrier to then wearing that headset. So we tested our VR headsets with different cultures, ethnicities, headdresses, and even just going down to individual freedom of expression. Somebody doesn't want to take their baseball cap off. That headset, one way or the other, should work. So we don't want anyone to get to a point where all of a sudden they've got to sort of put their hand up and say, you've got to excuse me, I can't take part in this task, this leisure time, this work because of choices I make or celebrate.
Yes, fascinating hearing you talk about this, because when you mentioned earlier about diversity and inclusion being part of the build process, you think about a laptop and you just think about a simple design of a Lenovo laptop, a simple design, by the way, which has been very popular for many years and continues to be. Yet, you think, how does the diversity and inclusion impact its development? And it sounds like there's actually a lot of different ways.
Yeah, and it's funny actually. I mean, the main way it's you said about different technologies and that the laptop's still the mainstay. There's been so many things over the years. I'm probably guilty of talking to the press at one point saying this would be the year where wearables will take over everything. And there was one year where I thought, would I end up being a smartwatch specialist? But the way we drive the software hasn't changed. It's still tactile responses to the front of the device. And what I find fascinating is that way we drive a computer, that core method of input, is a couple hundred years old. It's from the first mechanical typewriter, and that has two conflicting stories. One of which was the whole idea that the keyboard was laid out to stop the actual hammers fouling with each other based on the layout of most popular, but then you've got all the different languages to look at. And the other story actually about how the mechanical typewriter came about was a guy invented it so his blind sister could write letters. So, yeah. But either way, whichever one you subscribe to, it's fascinating that those challenges that had to be overcome 200 years ago still are dictating the way we control and interact with PCs.
And it doesn't feel like that's going to change anytime soon. I mean, let's just park the humane AI reviews for a minute. The amount of new technology that's coming out in the AI space. We've got Rabbit R1. We've got Limitless now coming out with a new pendant. We're starting to see this new category emerge of devices. Yet at the same time, a lot of people still looking to buy the traditional laptop and not wanting to get away even from the traditional keyboard.
Yeah, I think the AI PC is, I mean, the whole idea of the sort of, let's say, like the communicator badge from popular science fiction franchise series over the decades. Yes, it's great, but ultimately, if that, even using something fantastic like Copilot for Microsoft, I'm sometimes, if it's trying to write an email for me, I then have to get to the keyboard to edit it on a mistake it's made, because it's far more painful a process to try and edit it with voice commands. I mean, the easiest way to look at that is any kind of voice command in a car. The amount of navigate to Bracknell Town Centre kind of thing. The amount of times you have to say it, where if it came up with something that was slightly wrong and all you had to do was hit backspace 2 times, that interaction now has become a lot easier. And I think these kind of voice commands and interactions have their place, but yeah, I do think we're a long way off replacing those traditional ways of interacting and driving a PC.
And of course, you mentioned AI PC. I mean, it's not just new keyboards these new Lenovo laptops are getting this time round, getting much more powerful processors, but also the capability to onboard AI, essentially, to be able to function AI on board the machine. So talk us through what's new in 2024 from Lenovo on that front.
Yes, I mean, it's an really interesting time this year, because you've got computers coming out that have got NPUs, neural processing units. Now, these are the easiest way to look at it in some ways is a bit like, to show my age now, when people bought PCs that had a separate maths coprocessor, a dedicated component cat in shot again. She's really mucking for the camera now and destroying my desk.
Nina just wants to be in amongst it all. And I think quite right too.
Not camera shy, but yeah, you know, when you've got this MPU, which is dedicated architecture to look at running these large language models and computational models, that you know, because ultimately you look at it, you know, there's things like Adobe with their generative fill and the AI features and things like DaVinci Resolve. And one could argue, well, I can run that now. I haven't got AI on my computer and it works. But some of that is then loading it onto the GPU. Other elements of it are running off into the cloud. But the ability then for my PC to do some of this itself and look at the internet itself. Let's just say I wanted to generate, you know, a fictitious image. At the moment, it's on a server somewhere and it's looking at all these images. But if my PC could do that and just look at a load of images on the web and then come back with its own conclusion in short bursts, because the architecture's been designed to do it with very good levels of power consumption. So I don't go, I've just done something in AI, but now I've got 15 minutes left on my battery. You know, these basic models we know of from, you know, things like ChatGPT, this is just the start of it. And when you look at what the commercially or consumer accessible AI tools, how they progressed in just a year, I think it only took a few days for ChatGPT to get 1 million users. And that just shows the speed of, you know, everyone's having a play with it, whether it be my children sort of picking sort of funny images of chinchillas with baseball bats or something, all the way through to people using them to summarize meeting. You know, at every level. I was doing something yesterday. I was using AI to generate Arduino code for me because I haven't got a clue how to do it. But every person is looking at it out of curiosity, and people are already using it as a tool. And this is the year when it genuinely becomes accessible for everyone. You know, every level of user can start leveraging it themselves. It's not prescribed what you can and can't do with it. And the more people explore what it can do, the more that model learns. And so, yeah, we've got Intel's platform this year that's got MPUs built in. Later on in the year, Qualcomm are releasing architecture to run on Windows, and AMD will have a very powerful platform later in the year. And these, we're talking about consumer, you know, devices in users' hands that are performing, able to process up to 50 trillion operations per second. And it's incredible, it's one of those numbers. It gets to the point. It's hard to sort of rationalize, isn't it? 50 trillion operations per second on a laptop sitting on your lap while you're on the train, or just, you know, it's just powerful what it can do.
Yeah, I think we're both old enough to remember the days when we used to have the debate, you know, can a laptop replace a desktop? Remember those debates we used to have?
Absolutely, yeah. And I remember, yeah, when laptops were almost a companion device for the highest paid exec.
Yeah, you would never replace a desktop with it.
No.
And now it's totally the opposite. I mean, desktops is another question, because obviously Lenovo still make desktops. A lot of companies still do, but I would imagine the sales of desktops have gone way down in favor of laptops these days.
It's as you'd expect. 4 years ago, there wasn't much demand for desktops, but now there's enough time. I mean, you're also looking at the fact that we are 4 years since a lot of people rushed and bought portable computers to get people to work from home. So I believe I think in the UK alone, it was something like about 16 million PCs were purchased in 2020. So they're all 4 years old now. And also at the same time, businesses, you know, small, medium and large, have got to the point where they can make decisions now on what the workplace looks like. You know, when people have been, you know, it almost feels like every other week there's a story in the press about a large company saying, actually, we're not going to have that mothership in the centre of this city anymore. I mean, Facebook famously bought themselves out of a lease of a building they hadn't even moved into because the workplace dynamic had changed. Now, because of that, some companies are saying, well, there are areas where we do still need employees. So desktops are sort of, I guess, making a comeback isn't the right term, but, you know, there's demand for them again. Now people have matured their real estate strategy. You can even get it where the example I always use is if you look at sort of a call center for, let's say, a bank or a broadband company or something, typically in that organization, they might be some of the lowest paid people, but they're the ones who are required to come to work at prescribed times on a shift, maybe to run that call center. And it might be some big shed on some out of town ring road. So you've got the lowest paid people who've got to get there at certain times, maintain a car to get to start their shift at 9 and things. And it's the people higher up who get to enjoy the flexible balance and stuff. So some employers are saying, well, actually, these people can work from home, but we need to give them a desktop. We can't have a call center operator discussing somebody's loan or something like that whilst they're taking the kids to an indoor trampoline park or sitting in a pub because it's got free Wi-Fi. These are the freedoms that people are enjoying now. But there are certain people who, working from home is an advantage for them, but a desktop actually works better, or even an all-in-one. That's something I was very mindful of where people were looking at devices for working from home. Not everyone's got the room to have a couple of monitors, close the door on their study. But if someone's got an all-in-one, it's a simple one power cable and you can pack that away on a Friday. You can shut work away and it's not sitting on the kitchen worktop or the dining room table, just, that light blinking saying, well, you might as well check in with work on a weekend. So there are, again, there's some advantages to the form factor, much in the same way with a laptop. You travel a lot, you get a 12-inch device. It's more a desktop replacement for yourself over there. Have a 15-inch device. The form factor of a desktop can help even sort of office layouts or people working from home.
It always interests me that a major event in the world which cut us off and took away a lot of our freedoms actually in some ways enabled a lot of freedoms as well, new freedoms that we never even thought we'd have. It's quite fascinating. Let's talk about the consumer end of the market, because for consumers going out to buy, say, a Lenovo laptop today, there's a lot out there. There's a lot of choice. There's people like me on air every day saying, hey, Lenovo's great. You should try Lenovo. And then they go online and they start researching and they see all these different brands and essentially sub-brands of Lenovo products. Can you maybe talk us through what is sort of basic entry level up to, let's say someone who's not quite prosumer, but someone who's wanting to create content on it or do some cool stuff?
So, our main consumer brand is Ideas. So everything enterprises think, where we started from the ThinkPad. So when you look at consumer, it's Ideas. So having that sort of division. So consumer laptops are IdeaPad, excuse me, consumer desktops, ThinkCenter and so on. But then inside that, we have got our yoga brand, which is sort of more of a premium. It started off with the devices that can convert round to a sort of a two-in-one, but now yoga just means anything that's sort of premium. If then users want to go up to sort of, there are performance specs within the yoga. It's not just sort of nice Pantone colors and organic materials. There are i9 devices there, but for someone who really wants performance but doesn't want that professional mobile workstation, we then have our Legion devices, which is our gaming brand. So that's it's funny actually, I know people who work in the computer games industry didn't know Legion was Lenovo. They knew it as and it wasn't a purchase brand; it was our brand of creation. So, but it's become a very big brand in the South. But it's just no one knew it was Lenovo. It just stood on its own 2 feet as Legion. So there's quite a few tiers, but it's always difficult for consumers because some people are, well researched. I sort of take the liking back to sort of again show my age, sort of hi-fi enthusiasts who would really read about this one's got the right connectors on the back so I can have that oxygen-free cable and I'll have no degradation. People go to that level before they bought separates. And there's still always going to be the people who, and I know the high street's not the same now, but the people who are attracted by the one in the window with today's special price on it. And that happens on websites. That happens when we walk into these large out-of-town sheds. There's always going to be something on a gondola end jumping out at us. There's always going to be an advert on the telly that says, I can't believe that machine's for that price. And it can be, I think it's even harder in some ways for the not so technical user to navigate because there are so many sources of information. The podcasts, YouTubers, still people will read sort of traditional mainstream media outlets, whether it be printed or online. But then you still walk into a store and there might be a brand you didn't consider and it's actually at a price you didn't think was achievable. But I guess one of the hardest things to take when you're in a sort of retail environment is those little placeholder cards in front of them only have 3 or 5 bullet points, and it's very hard to get over some of the features. A bit like going back to the whole this year's ThinkPad looks like last year's ones. Even in the consumer space, it's very hard to demonstrate some of these little features which are it's not till you really read the reviews or play with the device that you can realize things. I'll give you a great example, actually, the microphone arrays. So it's where you have more than one microphone on the webcam on the top of the screen. Now this goes back, especially what you said about the freedoms the last 4 years. People who were in work in 2019 might have been going into meeting rooms and all sort of shouting into a speakerphone in the middle of the table. Then you get to 4 years ago, and depending on what device people had, they were having a richer audio-visual experience connecting with their friends and their colleagues and external agencies than they actually had when they commuted to a place of work. And we've become very reliant on, the whole idea of, a video call was something we did to a great aunt in Australia once a year because if they both had a webcam or something. But now we're so reliant on it. The quality of the microphones, the quality of the speakers, the ability to play different types of audio, or, if I'm on a Zoom or a Teams call, the human vocal range is the bit that really should be elevated and everything else really doesn't matter. But when I switch to a video streaming platform, it's the other way around and things. And the quality of that in and out of the audio, again, you might not see that on a shelf in a retail environment, but it's important because I don't want, as a user myself, or I don't want any of our customers to have to do that. Oh, sorry if you can't hear me, I'm using my laptop. Then we've kind of failed with the hardware we're putting in it. You shouldn't have to apologize for the device you've selected or work gave you, or, you spent the best part of your student grant on. It should work for you.
So the new keyboard, or the new accessibility features that are built into the keyboards, that will be on the ThinkPads only, correct? For
the time being, it's just because they've had these are the most recent overhauls. So yeah, this is something you're going to see filter out on everything, and it is typically, we learn something on the ThinkPads and then work how to make that mainstream as well. And the great thing is, it's not something we have to make a decision on. There's some features where we think, right, okay, the consumer market might not support that. If it nudges a laptop that's traditionally $399 up to $459, we're on a different shelf, to use a crude sort of comparison. So that redesign of the keyboard is something, it's just different tooling. So it's something we can put into all of our devices, and no one's going to have to pay more or make a include or exclude decision when they're reaching for their wallet.
Listen, I am so glad to have you on the show today. I've learned a lot, and it's been really interesting geeking out with you on this stuff. Graham, thank you for coming on to Double Tap, and thank you to Nina for making an appearance as well.
She'll get her royalties cut, don't worry.
Absolutely. Thanks, Graham.
Pleasure. Bye now.
Huge thank you to Graham Thomas from Lenovo, Senior Technologist for Lenovo in the UK and Ireland, joining us here on Double Tap today. If you've got a view on what you've heard today, maybe a thought on what AI PCs will bring, or what your thoughts are on these new accessible keyboards that are rolling out on the ThinkPads, do let us know. Get in touch. You can comment below, or you can send an email, feedback@doubletaponair.com. You can call 1-877-803-4567. I'll catch you with another Double Tap on YouTube next time.